Hey everybody, this is Mr. Harper again, wanting to go over algebraic proofs. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is a proof. So when you prove something, you have certain, let's say, rules. And so we talked about the rules of algebra. That would be the addition property of equality, the subtraction property of equality, the reflexive properties, distributive property, all those different properties. Those are sort of like my rules. And so when I'm proving something, I have something that's given to me, and using those rules I can then make a conclusion, and by that I've proven it, meaning I'm using things I'm allowed to use, so laws or rules, and from those rules I've gotten to a specific conclusion. Okay, so the laws, and there's a way to prove the rules themselves, or some of them anyway. But anyway, so we're going to start off with this problem. This is actually on the worksheet. Now, it's telling us to solve this equation. So the first step in any proof is to write down what's given. And so the actual reason is this what's given to us, meaning we're just starting off with this here. And so the first thing I would do in solving this problem, if you remember, I said that if I can, I usually distribute. Now, so that means right here, I can actually distribute the -3. Now, that negative does come along with that 3. So what that ends up becoming is 12x -3 times x is -3x, -3 times 7 is -21 equals 8x. Okay, so now the question is what property allowed me to distribute that -3? Well, that would be the distributive property. My handwriting is not the best, but hopefully it's legible. So now here, what would I do next? So remember, I always said distributive property is usually the first, but or can be the first. Now next here, I notice that I can combine 12x and 3x, or -3x here. Okay, now I can't combine them to 8x because that's on the other side of the equal sign, but I can combine 12x and -3x to get 9x. And whenever we do that, we can just put our reason for doing that was simplifying or combining like terms. So I'm actually going to put combine like terms. So I just combine like terms on that one. And also, let me just say this, combining like terms is actually a property of the distributive property, but we're not going to worry about trying to understand that here. Okay, so now when I'm doing this, if you remember in my solving equations, I said if you have an x on both sides, I need to move one of those. So I'm going to move the 9x by subtracting 9x from both sides. So I'm subtracting 9x. This cancels, and I'm left with, and I'm on line 4 here, -21 equals, now 8x minus 9x is -1x. And actually what I'm looking at here is I can tell that I didn't necessarily do the steps that it wanted me to do, and that's actually okay. So sometimes when I give you a chart like this, sometimes you'll be able to solve it in less steps than the actual problem kind of thought for you to do it, and that's okay. And sometimes it'll take more steps. So I'm actually going to have one more step here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when I subtracted 9x from both sides, what allowed me to do that? Well, what allowed me to do that was the subtraction or subtractive property of equality. And I put POE for property of equality, just so I don't have to write it out each time. So what allows me to subtract 9x from both sides is the subtractive property, or actually it's subtraction. I don't know why I put subtractive. Subtraction property of equality. Now to get x by itself, I need to get rid of that -1, and this is a mistake a lot of people make, is they want to add 1 because they see that negative. Well, we're not subtracting 1, we're multiplying by -1. So to get rid of that, we're going to divide by -1. This simplifies, and we get x equals -21 over -1 is 21. And what allowed me to do that? So what did I do to both sides? I divided by something. So what allows me to do that is the division property of equality. Now, most of you would think, well, we're done, and actually we're not, because when we want to solve for x here, we always have to have x on the left side. Okay, so I'm actually kind of glad. I'm going to add a nice little step here. Step 6. Okay, and all I'm going to do is, if 21 equals x, then x equals 21. And what property allows me to switch that? Well, that's the symmetric property. Okay, so hopefully this helps. I'm going to make a few more videos with different problems, but hopefully this is helpful in kind of understanding what you're doing when you're doing an algebraic proof.